Daniel Cross had been alone for 8 months, and the silence was becoming a physical thing. It pressed against his ears in the observation deck of Outpost Gamma 7, where stars blinked cold and indifferent through reinforced glass. The mining station orbited a dying red giant, its machinery grinding away at asteroids that drifted past like wounded animals seeking shelter. His work was simple enough: process the shipments of crystalline ore that automated drones extracted from the asteroid field, maintain the life support systems, file reports that nobody read, wait for the supply ship that came once every 6 weeks, repeat. The other crew members had rotated out months ago, citing mental health concerns. Daniel had volunteered to stay. Alone was what he wanted. Alone meant no one could die because of his mistakes. The exterior inspection alarm chimed through his quarters at midnight station time. A malfunction in the waste disposal system needed manual verification. Daniel pulled on his environment suit with practiced movements, checking seals twice before cycling through the airlock. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. He spotted the creature while running diagnostics on the disposal chute. At first, Daniel thought it was debris, just another chunk of rock tumbling through space. Then it moved. Wings unfolded, translucent membranes catching starlight like stained glass. A void dragon. Daniel had seen them in training videos labeled as hazards to avoid. They fed on radiation and metals, making them threats to any mining operation. Most stations had automated defense systems to drive them away. This one was small, probably juvenile by the standards of its kind. Its scales were gray-black, darker than the space around it. As it drifted closer to the waste disposal field, Daniel noticed the damage. Scars crisscrossed its wings. Several scales along its flank were missing, exposing raw tissue beneath. The dragon moved with a limp, favoring its left side. It began feeding on the waste metals, carefully selecting pieces and dissolving them with some kind of biochemical process Daniel couldn't quite see. The creature was starving. That much was obvious from how methodically it consumed every scrap. Daniel watched until his oxygen reserves forced him back inside. He filed his maintenance report, noting the waste disposal system was functioning normally. He didn't mention the dragon. Protocol required reporting all void dragon sightings to corporate headquarters, which would dispatch a removal team. They'd kill it or drive it into deep space where it would likely starve anyway. The next night, Daniel did something stupid. He gathered processed ore scraps that were scheduled for recycling, materials too contaminated for commercial use but perfectly safe. He loaded them into a cargo container and programmed the disposal system to eject it at a specific time and location. Then he waited in the observation deck, lights dimmed, watching the coordinates. The dragon returned. It approached the container cautiously, circling twice before beginning to feed. Daniel noticed it moved a little easier tonight, the limp less pronounced. When the container was empty, the creature paused. Its head swiveled toward the station, toward the observation window where Daniel stood. For a moment, their eyes met across the void. The dragon's eyes were amber, glowing faintly with internal light. Then it turned and disappeared into the darkness between stars. Daniel started calling it Ash, though he told himself not to get attached. Getting attached to things led to loss, and he'd had enough loss for one lifetime. Still, he prepared another container the following night. And the night after that, Ash returned each time, arriving at roughly the same hour, feeding with what seemed like growing confidence. A week into this routine, Daniel's terminal chimed with an incoming message from his supervisor. The automated monitoring systems had detected unusual activity in the waste disposal patterns. Was there a problem he needed to report? Daniel crafted a careful response, claiming he was running efficiency tests on the recycling protocols. Technically not a lie. The supervisor seemed satisfied. On the 12th night, Ash wasn't alone. Another dragon hung in the distance, larger and broader through the chest. This one's scales held a bronze tint that caught the red light of the dying star. It didn't approach, just watched as Ash fed. Daniel felt like he was being evaluated, judged by something ancient and unknowable. His terminal pinged again. This time the message was from corporate security. Sensor arrays had detected void dragon activity near the station. He was ordered to activate defensive measures immediately and cease any activities that might be attracting them. Failure to comply would result in contract termination and possible criminal charges for endangering company property. Daniel read the message 3 times. His finger hovered over the button that would activate the defense grid, automated weapons that would fill the space around the station with lethal projectiles. Ash was out there right now, feeding on the scraps he'd provided. One press and the dragon would be dead. He thought about the scars on its wings, the way it had looked at him through the observation window. The bronze dragon still watching from a distance. These creatures were supposed to be mindless beasts, driven by instinct and hunger. But the way Ash returned each night, the way it waited at specific coordinates, the way the other dragon observed without interfering, all of it suggested something more. Daniel closed the message without responding. He prepared another container, doubling the amount of processed ore. If he was going to lose his job, he might as well be fired for a good reason. He'd spent 8 months running from his past, from the crew he'd failed to save, from the guilt that ate at him in the dark hours. Maybe it was time to run toward something instead. Outside the observation window, Ash finished feeding. The dragon spread its damaged wings and hung motionless in space, silhouetted against the stars. Daniel placed his hand against the cold glass, a gesture of connection across the void. Tomorrow, corporate would probably send someone to investigate. Tomorrow, there would be consequences for his choices. But tonight, one small creature in the vastness of space wouldn't go hungry. That had to count for something. 3 weeks passed, and Daniel stopped pretending this was temporary. 6 dragons came now, arriving in a staggered formation like travelers who knew the route by heart. Ash was always first, followed by the bronze one Daniel had named Copper. Then came others he'd started cataloging in his personal logs. Granite, whose scales were pale gray like weathered stone. Frost almost silver blue in certain light. Onyx, whose black scales seemed to absorb photons. And a smaller purple-tinged female he called Violet. The feeding platform had evolved from random cargo containers to a designated area Daniel had assembled from spare materials. He arranged the processed ore in patterns now, testing theories about dragon behavior. They always consumed the materials in the same order. Highest radiation content first, then working down to basic metals. Smart. Efficient. Not the behavior of mindless animals. Daniel's terminal buzzed during breakfast, 4th day of week 5. His supervisor's face appeared on screen, expression grim. Cross, we need to talk about the sensor data. You've got multiple void dragons establishing a permanent presence around that station. This isn't efficiency testing. This is a protocol violation. They're clearing debris, Daniel said, which was true. The dragons had started ranging farther from the station, consuming dangerous fragments that posed collision risks. The automated systems can't reach half of what they're taking care of. I don't care if they're washing the windows. Standing orders are to eliminate void dragon presence near company assets. You've got 48 hours to disperse them or we're sending a security team. The call ended. Daniel sat staring at the blank screen, breakfast forgotten. Security team meant weapons. Meant killing creatures that had done nothing wrong except trust him. That night, Ash approached closer than ever before, within 10 meters of the observation window. The dragon's amber eyes studied Daniel with what looked like concern. Could it sense his stress? Did these creatures read emotional states somehow? The bronze dragon, Copper, drifted alongside Ash. Together, they performed a strange aerial dance, wings moving in synchronized patterns. Then Ash did something that made Daniel's breath catch. The dragon descended to the feeding platform and carefully placed something there before retreating. Daniel suited up and cycled through the airlock, heart pounding. On the platform lay a fragment of pure crystal, flawless and geometric. No natural process created shapes like this. Ash had brought him a gift. Daniel held the crystal up to the starlight. It pulsed faintly in his gloved hand, warm to the touch even through the suit's insulation. A thank you? An attempt at communication? He looked at Ash, hovering 20 meters away, and slowly bowed his head. The dragon's wings rippled in response. Word of the dragon gathering had spread beyond corporate channels. 2 days later, a Quellan merchant vessel passed through the system and transmitted a formal complaint to the Galactic Council. The Quellans were a reptilian species obsessed with order and hierarchy, and they found the sight of void dragons congregating peacefully near a human station deeply disturbing. Their historical records claimed void dragons were solitary, aggressive toward sentience, and impossible to approach without lethal force. Daniel spent hours in the station's database, searching for information about void dragons that went beyond hazard warnings. Deep in the archives, he found references to something called the precursor species, an ancient civilization that vanished millennia ago. One fragmentary text suggested the precursors had formed bonds with void dragons, using them as companions and guardians. But the records were incomplete, damaged by time and multiple translations. No one had successfully approached a void dragon in thousands of years. Until now. Until a lonely human on a forgotten mining station started leaving food scraps. The security team arrived ahead of schedule, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with weapons already hot. Daniel watched from the observation deck as their ship, the Retribution, took up position between the station and the dragons. 6 smaller attack craft deployed, bristling with plasma cannons and missile pods. A gruff voice crackled over the station's communication system. "This is Captain Rhodes of Retribution. Stand by for Void Dragon removal operations. Seal your station and stay clear of exterior viewports." "Wait," Daniel transmitted back. "You can't just kill them. They're intelligent. They're trying to communicate. Dragons are classified as spacefaring predators. Our orders are clear. Rhodes out." Daniel watched the attack craft form a perimeter. The dragons hadn't fled. They hung in space, wings folded, watching the human ships with those glowing eyes. Ash was closest to the station, directly in the line of fire. "Please," Daniel said into the comm, knowing he sounded desperate and not caring. "Give me 1 hour. Let me prove they're not threats." Silence stretched for 30 seconds. Then Rhodes responded, 1 hour, Cross. After that, we complete our mission." Daniel grabbed the largest bioreactive crystal from his collection of dragon gifts and cycled through the airlock. His suit felt inadequate, a thin barrier between himself and the void. He walked to the exterior platform, magnetized boots clanking against metal. The attack craft tracked his movement, weapons trained on the space around him. Ash drifted closer. Then Copper. Violet approached from above. One by one, all 6 dragons moved into formation around the platform, around Daniel. He stood in the center, holding the crystal high above his head. The dragons began to glow, a soft luminescence spreading across their scales. Their bioelectric fields synchronized, creating a web of light that connected each dragon to the others, and all of them to Daniel. The aurora that erupted could be seen from light years away. Blues and greens and purples cascaded across space, dancing between the dragons and spiraling out in fractal patterns. It was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever witnessed. Inside his suit, every hair stood on end. The crystal in his hand blazed like a star. On the bridge of Retribution, Captain Rhodes stared at his screens in disbelief. His weapons officer had lowered the targeting system without orders, too mesmerized to fire. "Sir," the officer whispered, "what are we looking at?" Rhodes didn't answer. He didn't know. Nobody did. But Daniel Cross, standing in the middle of an impossible light show with 6 void dragons circling him in perfect harmony, knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The aurora faded slowly, like a dream reluctant to end. Daniel stood on the platform, legs shaking, barely able to process what had just happened. The dragons remained close, their formation loose but protective. Captain Rhodes had postponed the elimination order, but only temporarily. Ships carrying xenobiologists and government officials were already en route, arriving within 5 days. Daniel had that long to prove void dragons deserved to live. He started with the crystals. Every dragon had brought him one over the past weeks, each unique in structure and composition. Daniel arranged them in his quarters, running spectral analysis through the station's limited scientific equipment. The crystals weren't random gifts. They were tools, each one calibrated to resonate at specific frequencies. On the second day, Daniel tried something new. He took 3 crystals outside and arranged them in a triangle pattern on the feeding platform. Ash arrived within minutes, studied the formation, then carefully repositioned 1 crystal. The pattern changed from a simple triangle to something more complex, a geometric shape Daniel didn't recognize. Copper added 2 more crystals from somewhere, completing what looked like a 3-dimensional mathematical proof. "You're showing me something," Daniel whispered, knowing the dragon couldn't hear him through the vacuum. "But what?" That night he barely slept. His terminal displayed the crystal pattern from every angle, trying to decode its meaning. The breakthrough came at dawn when he overlaid the pattern with stellar navigation charts. The crystals mapped a route through space, ending at coordinates in a nebula 3 systems away. Something important was there. Something the dragons wanted him to see. By day 3, the observation deck had become a command center cluttered with tablets and data screens. Daniel documented everything: dragon behavior patterns, crystal compositions, the way they moved in synchronized formations. Granite brought him an ore sample he'd never seen before, laced with bioreactive compounds that glowed under ultraviolet light. When Daniel touched the strange ore, the world shifted. Cold flooded his mind, the absolute zero of deep space. Then hunger, vast and ancient. Curiosity that had burned for millennia. And beneath it all, something that felt achingly like loneliness. The sensation lasted only seconds, but it left him gasping, tears frozen on his cheeks inside the helmet. The dragons didn't just think. They felt, they remembered. They had been alone so long they'd almost forgotten what connection meant. Daniel rushed back inside and sent an emergency transmission to the incoming research ships. They're not animals. They're people. Different from us, but people. They've been trying to talk to us all along, and we've been too afraid to listen. The response came from Dr. Helen Worth, Chief Xenobiologist for the Galactic Council. That's a bold claim, Mr. Cross. We'll need substantial evidence. I've got it. Come see for yourself. The research convoy arrived on day 4. 7 ships carrying scientists from 6 different species. Dr. Worth transported to the station immediately, a tall woman with silver hair and skeptical eyes. She listened to Daniel's explanation with increasing interest, examining the crystals and the data he'd compiled. This is remarkable, she admitted, but it proves intelligence, not peaceful intent. Void dragons have destroyed ships before. Because those ships attacked first, Daniel said. Every recorded incident started with someone trying to kill them. They're defensive, not aggressive. How do you know? Come outside with me. Let them show you. Dr. Worth hesitated, then agreed. They cycled through the airlock together, stepping onto the platform where the dragons waited. Ash approached first, moving slowly, carefully. The dragon's amber eyes fixed on Dr. Worth with obvious curiosity. She stood frozen, hand trembling as she reached toward the offered crystal in Ash's claws. The moment she touched it, her entire body went rigid. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her steady while the connection flooded through her mind. When it ended, she was crying. They lost everyone, she said. Their bonded species died out thousands of years ago. They've been wandering ever since, trying to find someone who could understand them. No one ever did. Until you. By evening, every scientist on the research ships had made contact with a dragon. The crystalline connection allowed them to experience fragments of dragon consciousness, memories of ancient partnerships, the texture of starvation during long void crossings, the joy of finally being seen as more than monsters. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to deny, but the Quellan representative refused to accept it. His name was Ambassador Trell, and he stood in the station's conference room with rigid posture and cold eyes. Intelligence does not equal trustworthiness. The Quellans have territorial claims to this sector dating back 12,000 years. We will not permit void dragons to establish a presence here. You don't own space, Daniel said. We own the right to feel safe. Void dragons are inherently dangerous. Their size, their power, their ability to survive in any environment. One angry dragon could devastate a colony. One angry Quellan could do the same with a weapon. Do we exterminate your entire species as a precaution? Trell's scales flushed darker with anger. We are civilized. We follow laws. Dragons are chaos incarnate. Dr. Worth stepped between them. Gentlemen, this isn't productive. Ambassador Trell, what would it take for you to accept coexistence? Proof they can be controlled. A guarantee they will never threaten Quellan interests. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. They're not pets. They're partners. Then your partnership will die with them when our battle fleet arrives. We invoked our security clause with the Galactic Council this morning. Our ships will be here in 3 days and they have authorization to use lethal force. The ambassador left. The room fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Daniel looked at Dr. Worth, saw the same helpless frustration in her eyes. We're out of time, she said. Daniel walked to the observation window. Outside, the dragons circled the station in their protective formation, unaware that a fleet was coming to destroy them. Ash drifted closest, scales catching starlight. No, Daniel said quietly. We're just getting started. He had 3 days to change the galaxy's mind. 3 days to prove that friendship was stronger than fear. It would have to be enough. News traveled fast in the galactic community. Within hours of Ambassador Trell's departure, Every major news network was broadcasting the story of the human who befriended void dragons. Daniel's face appeared on screens across a dozen systems, usually alongside footage of the Aurora display. Some called him a hero, others called him dangerous. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the situation. Daniel participated via long-range holographic projection, standing in a circular chamber surrounded by representatives from 23 species. The ceiling above was transparent, showing the void of space. The dragons floated outside, visible to everyone. "State your case," said Council Chair Morthen. "A being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell." Daniel took a breath. "For thousands of years, we've treated void dragons as hazards. We never asked why they approached our stations or what they wanted. I'm guilty of that too at first. But when I stopped being afraid long enough to actually look, I saw creatures in pain. They lost their original bonded species to some ancient catastrophe. They've been alone ever since." A Quellan representative interrupted. "Loneliness does not justify the threat they pose." "What threat? Show me evidence of unprovoked dragon attacks." "Every incident in the historical record starts with someone shooting first. They're not predators. They're refugees." Dr. Worth stepped forward with her research team, presenting brain scans and behavioral analysis. The data showed void dragons possessed neural complexity equivalent to the most advanced spacefaring species. Their crystalline communication method was simply different from standard language, not inferior to it. "They've even demonstrated problem-solving abilities," Dr. Worth said, displaying holographic images. 3 days ago, we presented them with an unsolved mathematical theorem. They solved it within hours using arranged asteroid fragments. These beings are not only intelligent, they're brilliant. The chamber buzzed with discussion. Daniel saw doubt wavering on some faces, but the Quellan block remained unmoved. Ambassador Trell stood. "Intelligence makes them more dangerous, not less. A smart predator is the worst kind. We demand removal, and we will enforce it militarily if necessary." Council Chair Morthen raised one glowing appendage for silence. "The Council recognizes Quellan security concerns. However, we cannot authorize military action against a potentially sentient species without exhaustive study. We propose a compromise. Establish a monitoring station with representatives from multiple species. Observe the dragons for 6 months. Then decide." "Unacceptable," Trell said. 6 months allows them to multiply and spread. We invoke our right to immediate self-defense." "On what grounds?" "Historical precedent. Void dragons have killed Quellans. That alone justifies protective measures." Daniel felt his frustration boiling over. 12,000 years ago. Your records show one incident where a wounded dragon defended itself after your ships cornered it in an asteroid field. You're holding a grudge from before humans even left their home planet. The chamber erupted in argument. Species took sides along political lines that had nothing to do with dragons and everything to do with ancient alliances and territorial disputes. Daniel watched helplessly as his plea for understanding got buried under galactic politics. Then something happened outside. Ash pressed against the transparent ceiling. Amber eyes locked on Daniel. The other dragons joined, forming a circle around the chamber. Together, they began to glow, that same bioelectric pulse from the Aurora. But this time, the light was different, structured, intentional. The crystals Daniel had brought to the chamber started resonating. Everyone in the room felt it, a vibration in their bones that bypassed language and spoke directly to some primal understanding. Images flooded every mind present, memories of ancient species working alongside dragons to build civilizations, dragons rescuing stranded ships, guiding lost travelers through nebula fields, mourning dead partners with songs that echoed through empty space. And there, at the center of it all, a human figure, Daniel, not conquering or controlling, just offering food to a hungry creature. Simple kindness that sparked connection after millennia of isolation. When the vision ended, the chamber was silent. Ambassador Trell stood pale, his scales drained of color. Several representatives were openly weeping. "They're trying to tell us something," Council Chair Morthen said softly. "They want to help. They want to be partners again like they were with the precursors." "Yes," Daniel said. "And they chose humans because we reminded them of what they lost. We're not perfect. We come from a difficult world where survival means cooperation. We learned to see past differences because we had to. They recognized that in us. The vote, when it came, was closer than Daniel expected. 17 species voted to protect the dragons and establish diplomatic relations. 6 abstained. The Quellans, along with 2 allied species, voted against. Trell's final words echoed through the chamber. "You make a mistake today that will cost lives. We will protect our people, with or without council approval." The session ended. Daniel returned to the station exhausted, his head pounding from the crystalline connection. Dr. Worth met him in the observation deck. "The Quellan fleet is still coming," she said. "The vote doesn't change that. They claim sovereign right to self-defense in their own territory. This isn't their territory. It's unclaimed space. Try telling them that. Their battle group left port this morning. 3 warships fully armed. They'll be here in 48 hours. Daniel pressed his hand against the window. Ash hovered outside, waiting as always. The dragon had given Daniel everything: trust, friendship, a purpose beyond guilt and isolation. Now Daniel had to figure out how to protect that gift without getting everyone killed. His terminal chimed. A message from Earth marked Priority 1. Daniel opened it with shaking hands. It was from his former rescue team commander, someone he hadn't spoken to in 2 years. The message was simple. "We saw what you're doing out there. The whole team is proud of you, Danny. You didn't fail us. You saved us by teaching us that every life matters. Now go save those dragons. We believe in you." Daniel read it 3 times, vision blurring. They were proud of him. After everything, they understood. He wiped his eyes and opened a new communication channel to every human colony in range. If the Quellans wanted to fight, they'd have to go through humanity first, and humans were very good at protecting their friends. The response from human colonies came faster than Daniel expected. Messages flooded his terminal from mining stations, frontier settlements, exploration vessels, and core worlds alike. Hundreds of humans volunteering to stand between the dragons and the Quellan fleet. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "You can't all come here," Daniel transmitted back. "You'll start a war, but they came anyway. Civilian ships mostly. Cargo haulers, survey vessels, even a few private yachts. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in 1s and 2s, taking up positions around Outpost Gamma 7. No weapons, just presence. Witness to whatever was about to happen. Within 24 hours, 47 human ships formed a loose perimeter around the station. Dr. Worth watched from the observation deck, her expression troubled. "This isn't going to stop the Quellans. It might just make things worse." Daniel knew she was right. He'd spent the night running simulations. The Quellan battle group would arrive in 18 hours with enough firepower to destroy every ship here, dragons included. The humans were buying time, but time for what? What solution could possibly satisfy the Quellans while protecting the dragons? Ash found him at dawn, drifting close to the observation window. The dragon pressed one massive claw against the glass, and Daniel matched it with his palm. The gesture had become familiar, a ritual of connection. Through the crystal he wore on a chain around his neck. Daniel felt a pulse of emotion, gratitude, concern, and something that might have been affection. "I don't know how to fix this," Daniel said to the glass, knowing Ash couldn't hear but needing to say it anyway. "I don't know how to make them understand." The dragon's eyes brightened. Then Ash turned and flew toward the rest of the dragon pod. Within minutes, all 6 dragons had gathered in a tight formation. They began to move in patterns Daniel had never seen before, wings and tails creating shapes in space. A dance, or maybe a ritual, then they sang. The sound came through the station's hall as vibration, resonating in Daniel's chest. Other dragons appeared from nowhere, materializing out of the void like ghosts. 10, 20, 50. More kept coming, answering the call from light years away. Within an hour, hundreds of void dragons circled the station in a formation so vast it showed up on long-range scanners across 3 systems. "Oh no," Dr. Worth whispered. "The Quellans are going to see this as an invasion force." She was right. Ambassador Trell's furious transmission came within minutes. "You've assembled an army. This proves our concerns were justified. We're authorized to use unlimited force." "It's not an army," Daniel shot back. "They're gathering for something else. Something we don't understand yet. I don't care what you think it is. Clear them out in the next 2 hours or we'll do it for you." The transmission ended. Daniel ran both hands through his hair, mind racing. Every solution led to violence. Every path ended in death, unless there was something he was missing, some crucial piece of dragon behavior that might change everything. Ash returned to the observation window and deposited another crystal, larger than any before. This one pulsed with inner light, complex patterns shifting through its structure. Daniel suited up and retrieved it, bringing it inside to his quarters. When he touched it, the connection was different, stronger. Instead of emotions or memories, he felt intention, purpose. The dragons wanted to bond, not just with him, but with humanity as a species. They were offering something unprecedented, permanent partnership, the kind they'd shared with the precursors. But it required trust on both sides, a commitment that couldn't be broken once made. The dragons would dedicate themselves to humanity, and humans would have to accept responsibility for creatures the rest of the galaxy feared. It was an impossible choice. Daniel had no authority to speak for his entire species. He was just one person, a cargo hauler who'd made some questionable decisions and gotten lucky. How could he commit humanity to something this enormous? His terminal showed incoming messages from Earth's government, from colony administrators, from the Galactic Council. Everyone wanted him to make a decision that wasn't his to make. Everyone wanted him to solve a problem he'd helped create. Daniel walked to the observation deck where Dr. Worth was coordinating with the human ships. "They're offering a bond," he told her. "Permanent partnership like they had with the precursors. But I can't accept it. I'm nobody." "You're the person who fed a hungry dragon when no one else would," Dr. Worth said. "That makes you exactly the right person. What if I'm wrong? What if this brings war or worse? What if you're right and we miss the only chance we'll ever have to connect with something truly alien?" "Danny, look at them." She gestured to the window where hundreds of dragons circled. "They're not here to threaten anyone. They're here because they finally found someone who saw them as more than monsters. You did that. Now finish it." The Quellan battle group appeared on long-range sensors, 3 massive warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, weapons hot, heading directly for the station. Daniel had minutes to decide. He grabbed the bonding crystal and cycled through the airlock. The void embraced him as he stepped onto the exterior platform. Hundreds of dragons hung in space, waiting. Ash descended to hover directly in front of him. Daniel raised the crystal above his head. "I don't speak for all humans," he said, knowing his suit's transmitter would carry the words to every ship in range. "But I speak for myself. I choose friendship. I choose to trust you, and I hope my species will follow." The crystal blazed to life. Energy arced between Daniel and Ash, then spread to encompass every dragon in sight. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. Daniel felt them all, hundreds of consciousnesses connecting to his own. Ancient wisdom, cosmic loneliness, and overwhelming joy at finally being welcomed home. The Quellan warships arrived and immediately locked weapons on the dragon formation. But before they could fire, the dragons began to move. They formed a living wall between the station and the warships, but they didn't attack. They simply waited, scales glowing with the light of the bond. On the flagship's bridge, the Quellan commander hesitated. His targeting system showed not threats, but a unified force unlike anything in recorded history. Void dragons acting with purpose and coordination, backed by the collective will of humanity. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "I don't think we should fire." The commander looked at his orders, then at the impossible sight before him. Slowly, he powered down the weapons. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what came next. The Quellan commander's name was Fleet Admiral Saren, and he stared at his tactical display like it was showing him a ghost. 300 void dragons holding position between his warships and the human station, not attacking, not fleeing, just waiting. His orders were clear: eliminate the threat. But what he saw didn't look like a threat. It looked like a statement. "Open a channel to the human station," he said finally. Daniel answered from the exterior platform, still connected to Ash through the bonding crystal. "Admiral, explain what I'm looking at, human. A choice. You can fire on us and start a war with creatures who've existed longer than most civilizations. Or you can stand down and watch something beautiful happen. The Galactic Council authorized force if necessary. They also voted to establish diplomatic relations. You're choosing which order to follow. Choose the right one." Saren looked at his crew, young Quellans, all of them, who'd grown up on stories about void dragon attacks that happened before their grandparents were born. They looked scared, but they also looked curious, watching the dragons through view screens with something like wonder. "Stand down weapons," Saren said. "Maintain defensive posture, but do not fire unless fired upon." Daniel felt tension drain from his shoulders. Through the bond, he sensed relief from the dragons as well. They'd been prepared to defend him, but violence was their last choice, not their first. He touched Ash's scaled hide, feeling warmth even through his suit's gloves. "Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me yet. Ambassador Trell will have me court-martialed for this. You've bought time, not peace, but time was enough." Over the next hours, something unprecedented unfolded. Saren agreed to allow one dragon to approach his flagship under controlled conditions. Copper volunteered. Approaching slowly while quelling weapons, tracked every movement. Dr. Worth transported aboard with a bonding crystal and the necessary equipment. Saren watched through reinforced glass as the dragon settled onto his ship's exterior dock. "This is insane." "Probably," Dr. Worth agreed. "But it's the right kind of insane." "Will you touch the crystal?" "Why would I do that?" "Because you need to understand what your species has been running from for 12,000 years. Because fear breeds more fear until someone's brave enough to break the cycle. Be that someone." Saren hesitated, then placed his scaled hand on the crystal. The connection hit him like a physical blow. Memories flooded through his consciousness. Ancient Quellans working alongside void dragons during their species' earliest space exploration. Partnership and trust. Then a fracture, a misunderstanding that escalated into violence. The dragons had tried to help during a disaster, but their intervention was seen as an attack. Quellan leadership ordered them driven away, and the dragons left, grieving the loss of friendship. When Saren opened his eyes, he was shaking. "We were wrong. We've been wrong for so long. So change it," Dr. Worth said. "Right now. Be the one who finally makes it right." Saren transmitted a message directly to the Quellan homeworld, bypassing Ambassador Trell entirely. He sent everything: the crystal recordings, his own testimony, recommendations for immediate policy review. Then he did something no Quellan admiral had done in recorded history. He apologized. "On behalf of the Quellan Defense Fleet, I apologize to the Void Dragons for 12,000 years of misunderstanding. We acted from fear and pride. We're ready to do better." Copper's response came through the crystal as pure emotion. Forgiveness, relief, hope. The dragon spread its wings, and what Dr. Worth had learned was a gesture of respect. News spread across the galaxy faster than light travel. Within days, representatives from dozens of species arrived to witness the human-dragon bond. Some came as skeptics, others as believers, but all left changed by what they saw. Daniel spent weeks helping establish protocols for bonding, working with xenobiologists to understand the process. Other humans volunteered to bond with dragons, carefully selected and trained. A researcher named Rachel formed a bond with Granite and began documenting precursor archaeological sites the dragons remembered. A colony ship captain named David bonded with Frost and revolutionized deep space navigation, using dragon spatial awareness. A young woman from Mars named Amy bonded with Violet and started a rescue service for stranded ships. The bonds weren't without challenges. Dragons required specialized environments and specific nutritional needs. Some humans found the mental connection overwhelming, but those who succeeded discovered something precious: friendship that transcended language and biology, connection that made the vastness of space feel less empty. 6 months after the confrontation with the Quellan fleet, Daniel returned to Outpost Gamma 7. The station had been transformed into a sanctuary and training facility for human-dragon partnerships. Young people from across human space came to learn about bonding, and dragons arrived from distant corners of the galaxy, curious about the species that finally welcomed them home. Daniel stood on the old feeding platform where this all began. Ash settled beside him, scales glinting in the light of the dying star. Through their bond, Daniel felt contentment and something deeper. Love, but not romantic or familial. Something uniquely theirs, built on trust and shared experience. A young Quellan named Terran approached the platform nervously. "Mr. Cross, I came to see if a dragon might bond with me. My family thinks I'm crazy, but I have to try." Daniel smiled. "What made you decide?" "I read Admiral Saren's report about how we were wrong and how we let fear control us for thousands of years. I don't want to be afraid anymore." An ancient dragon appeared from the shadows beyond the station, scales like burnished gold. It moved slowly, carefully, watching Terran with eyes that held eons of memory. The young Quellan stepped forward, trembling but determined. When dragon and Quellan touched through the bonding crystal, light erupted across the platform. Daniel watched with tears in his eyes as two species found reconciliation after millennia of misunderstanding. Later, Standing at the observation window, Dr. Worth joined him. "You changed the galaxy, Danny. One act of kindness and everything shifted." "It wasn't just me. It was everyone who chose to trust instead of fear. Everyone who saw something different and got curious instead of violent. That's very human of you, sharing the credit." "That's very dragon of me, actually. They taught me that connection matters more than glory, that we're all better together than alone." Through the window, hundreds of dragons circled the station in graceful patterns, humans among them now, learning to fly through the bond. Earth had dispatched official ambassadors. The Galactic Council was rewriting first contact protocols. Children across a dozen species grew up seeing void dragons as partners instead of threats. And somewhere in the vastness of space, more dragons were hearing the call, coming home after millennia of wandering, finding at last a species willing to see them as they truly were. Daniel touched the window where Ash hovered outside. The dragon pressed back, amber eyes bright with joy. No words were needed. The bond carried everything that mattered: gratitude, friendship, belonging. In the cold void between stars, warmth had found a way. Not through weapons or technology, but through something simpler and infinitely more powerful. One person who refused to let another creature go hungry. One choice to offer kindness instead of fear. Everything else followed from there, building bridges between species that would stand for generations to come. And it all started with a lonely human, an injured dragon, and scraps of processed ore left on a feeding platform under dying starlight. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes. Sometimes all it takes to transform the galaxy is one person willing to see past fear to the lonely soul beneath. Daniel Cross learned that lesson on a forgotten mining station and taught it to the stars. The dragons would make sure that lesson was never forgotten again.